end of the runway. We're ready to go with
deciding
an impending mandatory rest period.
Or risk jail.
Risking jail, or hundreds of passengers having to be displaced and accommodated in a teeny tiny airport, in a teeny tiny place overnight.
Right.
The story continues.
Yep.
It's easy to imagine the stress. Okay, we've all been there. We know what it's like to try and make those business decisions where you're trying to do the right thing by your customer, you're trying to do the right thing by you, your team, the financial impact, the whole shebang. Yeah. So we've all been there. Trying to stay calm, frustrations grows, there's not an awful lot you can do about it. You're surrounded by aircraft, it's not like you can randomly decide to take off. But there's one thing he could do. He decided to keep his passengers on board rather than putting them at the terminal, so that when La Palmas reopened, he could get back in the air immediately. That seems reasonable.
Yep.
Air traffic control personnel who worked at Tenerife Tower were of a different mindset. It was a small airport, a tropical island, was now inundated with planes from all over the world. The tower was understaffed. The air traffic controllers were in no hurry to get the planes out of the gates. They were, in fact, ready to listen to a live soccer match.
Oh.
20 minutes after landing, Van Zieten received word from the tower that he should let his passengers off, because it looked like they were going to be here for a while.
Because of the soccer match.
Because of the soccer match, yes. So confounding things. I mean, there's always something out of your control.
Yeah.
You'd like to think that the bombing was also out of his control, but there's a number of things.
Yeah.
Things start to snowball when things are a bit wibbly wobbly. From there, the events of Tenerife continued to move forward like molasses. 20 minutes turned into an hour. The captain spent every moment thinking of ways to minimise his delay.
Yeah.
That constant process for business. What can I do to make this better? How can I make this better? How can I make this better?
Yeah.
He called headquarters to find out exactly how much time he had left in his mandatory rest period, before his mandatory rest period kicked in. An hour on the ground turned into 2, and then he had another idea. He decided he would refuel at Tenerife and shave half an hour off the turnaround time at La Paz.
Ah.
Time-saving idea backfired. As soon as he started to refuel, word came that La Paz was reopened.
Oh.
It was too late to stop the 35-minute refueling process.
Oh.
Finally, when it looked like the plane was ready to go, nature threw a wrench and a thick fog descended. I mean, you wouldn't write about it, would you? This is the actual events that happened to this poor person. Kicking himself over the decision to refuel, Van Zieten became more intent on getting underway. The fog growing thicker and thicker, visibility dropped to just 300 metres, which I would think in anybody's book is not enough time, not enough visibility to safely take off a 747.
No. So that poor gaze out of the cockpit, he couldn't even see the end of the runway. Van Zieten knew that every moment the fog got worse, it made it likelier that Tenerife Tower would close and shut the airport down. He saw the window of opportunity to get out of Tenerife before the overnight stay was closing. It was now or never. It was time to go. But what the captain did next was completely and utterly out of character. He revved up the engines and the plane lurched down the runway. Wait a minute, Van Zieten's co-pilot said in confusion. We don't have ATC clearance. I know that, replied the captain as he hit the brakes. Go ahead then, ask. The co-pilot got on the radio and received airway clearance, which was approval of a flight plan, as you know, being a pilot. But the tower said nothing about the take-off clearance, and yet, determined to take off, Van Zieten turned the throttles to full power and roared down the foggy runway. The jumbo jet was just gaining momentum when, seemingly out of nowhere, the scariest sight Van Zieten could ever imagine appeared in front of him. A Pan Am 747 was parked across the runway. Van Zieten was approaching it at takeoff speed. There was no way to stop or swerve, but instinctively, Van Zieten knew that the only chance was to take off very early. Come on, please, the captain begged his plane and pulled the aircraft's nose up desperately, dragging its tail on the ground and throwing up a blinding array of sparks. The nose of Van Zieten's plane managed to narrowly clear the parked 747, but just as it looked like he was in the clear, the underside of Van Zieten's fuselage ripped through the top of the Pan Am plane. The KLM plane burst into a fiery explosion as it hurtled another 500 yards down the runway. Van Zieten, his entire crew, all of the passengers were killed. In all, 584 people lost their lives that day. The aeronautical community was stunned as by far the deadliest plane collision in history.
Wow.
An international team of experts descended on Tenerife Airport, as you would expect.
Yes.
Not only that, every other plane was delayed.
Yeah.
They examined every bit of evidence, interviewed every eyewitness, and scrutinised every single moment of the cockpit's recorders in an attempt to compile the cause of the accident.
Yeah.
Experts quickly ruled out mechanical failure, terrorist attack, and piecing together the events of that day, it was clear that the other plane on the runway, which was Pan Am Flight 1736, had missed a taxi turn-off and ended up in the wrong place. In the thick fog, Van Zetten couldn't see the Pan Am plane, and the Pan Am pilot couldn't see him, and tower control couldn't see either of them. And on top of that, the tower was undermanned, the controllers were distracted by the day's events, they were watching a soccer match. Despite all these factors, though, the tragedy would never have occurred if Van Zetten had not taken off without clearance. But why a seasoned pilot, the head of KLM's safety program, made such a rash and irresponsible decision is beyond anybody.